Hello there and welcome back to Sleep with Stories. Tonight, we journey into the 3-pound universe behind your eyes to explore perception, the silent process by which your brain turns chaos into reality. You have nothing to do but listen, breathe, and drift. Let's begin. 1. The delayed broadcast of your conscious reality. It is a staggering thought to realize that you have never actually lived in the present moment. Everything you perceive is technically a delayed broadcast, a meticulously edited rerun of reality. It takes approximately 100 milliseconds, a tenth of a second, for your brain to receive raw data from your senses, relay it through the thalamus, and present it to your conscious awareness. This delay exists because your brain is doing an immense amount of post-production work. It has to synchronize signals that travel at different speeds. Light hitting your eyes travels faster than the touch signals traveling from your toes up to your head. To prevent your life from feeling like a badly dubbed movie where the sound doesn't match the picture, your brain holds onto the faster signals for a fraction of a heartbeat, so it can present them to you as one unified now. You are forever drifting in the very recent past. 2. The great inversion and the brain's software. The physical laws of optics are uncompromising. Because your eye is a biological lens, the light that passes through your cornea and hits your retina is actually projected upside down and backward. If you were to look at the raw electrical data entering your brain, the floor would be hanging above you and the ceiling would be stretched beneath your feet. However, from the moment you took your first breath, your brain began a sophisticated software update. It cross-references your visual data with the pull of gravity and the feedback from your muscles, and it manually flips the image for you. This correction is so powerful that in famous experiments where people wore inverting goggles, their brains eventually flipped the world right side up again after several days, proving that up and down are mere opinions held by your neurons. 3. The painted hole, your occult blind spot. In each of your eyes, there is a literal, physical hole in your vision known as the blind spot. This is the point on the retina where the optic nerve exits the eye to travel into the brain. Because this specific spot is packed with nerve fibers rather than light-sensing cells, it is technically incapable of seeing anything at all. You have 2 gaps in your visual field, yet you never see a black void or a flickering static patch. This is because your brain is a master of filling in. It looks at the colors, textures, and patterns surrounding the blind spot and uses a highly advanced guessing algorithm to paint over the hole. Your brain effectively hallucinates a continuation of the wall, the sky, or the page, ensuring that your experience of the world feels unbroken and perfect, even though your equipment is technically flawed. 4. The fabrication of the color spectrum. One of the most profound secrets of perception is that color does not exist outside of your mind. In the physical universe, there are only varying wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation. A red rose in a garden isn't red in the way we think. It simply has a surface that reflects a specific wavelength of light, around 700 nanometers, while absorbing others. When those waves hit the cones in your eyes, your brain translates that mathematical frequency into the subjective feeling of red. Color is a psychological construction, a vibrant, internal language created by evolution to help you quickly distinguish between a ripe, life-giving berry and a dull, bitter leaf. You are the artist who provides the paint for the entire world you walk through every day. 5. The hidden vastness of the invisible world. We often feel as though we are seeing the world in its entirety, but human perception is tuned to a shockingly narrow slice of reality. We perceive less than 1% of the total electromagnetic spectrum, a tiny window we call visible light. All around you at this very moment, the air is thick with waves of ultraviolet light, infrared heat, radio signals, Wi-Fi data, and cosmic rays that are completely invisible to your biological sensors. If you had the eyes of a honeybee, you would see hidden ultraviolet bullseyes on flowers. If you had the pits of a rattlesnake, you would see the world as a shimmering map of heat. You are drifting through a crowded, radiant universe, yet you are only permitted to see the softest, most limited whisper of its true, chaotic form. 6. The proactive mind and the architecture of expectation. Your brain is far too busy to be a passive observer. It is a prediction engine. It doesn't wait for all the light and sound to enter before it decides what is happening. Instead, It uses top-down processing, where your past memories, your current mood, and your expectations are used to guess the world into existence. If you are walking through a dark house, your brain expects to see familiar furniture, so it uses the tiniest bit of light to render the couch you know is there. This is why we sometimes see ghosts or monsters in the shadows. Your brain is trying to be helpful by predicting a threat, preferring to be wrong and safe, rather than right and in danger. Your reality is a controlled hallucination that is constantly being checked against the data. 7. The illusion of the 360-degree horizon. While you feel like you are immersed in a high-resolution, 360-degree world, your eyes are actually only capable of seeing a tiny area of high detail, about the size of your thumbnail at arm's length. This is your foveal vision. Everything else in your periphery is blurry and lacks color. The sense that you are seeing the entire room around you right now is a grand illusion of memory. As your eyes dart around, your brain snaps photos and stitches them together into a persistent mental model. Even though you cannot see the wall behind your head, your brain keeps that wall active in your perception so that you never feel like you are floating in a void. You live inside a persistent simulation of your own making. 8. Pareidolia, the brain's search for a story. Your brain is so heavily weighted toward finding patterns that it often perceives deep meaning in total chaos, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. Because humans are profoundly social animals, our brains are hardwired from the moment of birth to seek out and recognize faces. This is why you cannot help but see a man in the moon, a smiling grill on a car, or a face in the charred bubbles of a piece of toast. Your fusiform face area, a dedicated circuit in the brain, is so sensitive that it will trigger a recognition signal at the slightest hint of two dots and a line. Your mind is a seeker of stories, constantly trying to turn the random noise of the universe into a familiar friend. 11. The proprioceptive map, your internal compass. Deep within the hidden architecture of your body, embedded in the fibers of your muscles, the sheaths of your tendons, and the capsules of your joints, are millions of microscopic sensors called spindles and Golgi tendon organs. These are the instruments of proprioception, often heralded as our true sixth sense. Proprioception is the silent, constant perception of your body's position in 3D space. It is the reason that, as you lie there in the velvet dark of your bedroom with your eyes squeezed shut, you still possess an absolute, unwavering certainty of where your limbs are. You know precisely how far your hand is from your face and the exact angle at which your knees are bent beneath the weight of the duvet. Your brain maintains a body schema, a virtual map that updates thousands of times a second by integrating mechanical tension and gravitational pull. Without this sophisticated internal compass, the simplest tasks, like reaching out to turn off a lamp or bringing a spoonful of tea to your mouth, would require intense, focused visual concentration. It is the sense that allows you to feel at home in your own skin, providing the physical foundation for your sense of self. 12. Equilibrioception and the inner sea. Tucked away in the temporal bone of your skull is a tiny, labyrinthine structure filled with a fluid known as endolymph. This is the home of equilibrioception, your sense of balance and spatial orientation. This system consists of 3 semicircular canals that detect rotational movement and 2 otolith organs, the utricle and saccule, that detect linear acceleration and gravity. Inside these organs are tiny calcium carbonate crystals, often called ear stones, that sit atop a bed of sensitive hair cells. As you lay your head down tonight, these tiny stones shift, bending the hair cells and sending a flurry of electrical signals to your brain to confirm which way is down relative to the earth. This perception is so fundamental that it forms the baseline of your reality. You only truly notice it when it is disrupted, such as the dizzying sea legs felt after a long voyage or the spinning sensation of vertigo. 13. Chronoception, the elasticity of the mind's clock. Time is often measured by the cold, rhythmic ticking of a clock, but your brain's perception of it, chronoception, is a fluid, elastic experience that has very little to do with seconds and minutes. Your brain doesn't have a single clock organ. Instead, it perceives time through the density of information processing. When you are in a state of high arousal, fear, or novelty, your amygdala becomes hyperactive, recording memories with such high resolution that when you look back, the event seems to have happened in slow motion. Conversely, when you are engaged in a repetitive, familiar task, or as you drift into the time loss of deep sleep, your brain chunks the information, making hours feel like moments. This explains why childhood summers seem to last for an eternity. Everything was new, while adult years seem to accelerate. As you relax now, your brain is shifting into a slower sampling rate, letting the now stretch out into a long, comfortable horizon of peace. 14. The McGurk effect, the great sensory compromise. We often imagine our senses as independent silos of information, but in reality, your brain is a relentless integration engine that prefers a single, coherent story over conflicting data. The McGurk effect is a startling demonstration of this, showing that what you see can actually override what you hear. In famous psychological experiments, when a subject sees a video of a person's mouth moving to say the sound GA, but the audio track plays the sound BA, the brain becomes confused by the mismatch. To resolve the conflict, it literally hallucinates a third sound, usually DA, to bridge the gap between the eyes and the ears. This cross-modal perception is a vital survival tool. It's why you can follow a conversation in a crowded, noisy cafe by watching the speaker's lips. Your brain is constantly weighting your senses, deciding in every millisecond whether to trust your eyes or your ears more. 15. The olfactory time machine. The sense of smell or olfaction occupies a unique and privileged position in the human brain. Unlike sight, sound, or touch, which must first pass through the thalamus, the brain's switchboard, sense signals have a direct highway to the amygdala and the hippocampus. These are the ancient regions of the limbic system responsible for raw emotion and long-term memory. This unique neural architecture is why a specific scent, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, a particular brand of pipe tobacco, or a grandmother's perfume, can bypass your logic entirely and trigger a flashbulb memory. You don't just remember the past when you smell these things. You perceive the emotional state you were in years ago. As you breathe in the familiar, quiet sense of your room tonight, your brain is using those olfactory cues to signal to your nervous system that you are in a safe, known environment, allowing your guard to drop. 16. Thermoception and the radiant exchange. Your perception of temperature, known as thermoception, is not a measurement of the air's temperature, but rather a perception of the heat flux, the speed at which energy is moving into or out of your skin. You have two distinct types of thermoreceptors, one for cold and one for warmth. If you place your hand on a piece of metal and a piece of wood that are both in the same room, the metal will feel colder because it is a better conductor and steals your body heat more rapidly. Your brain is constantly monitoring this radiant exchange to maintain homeostasis. Interestingly, if you stimulate both cold and warm receptors simultaneously with high heat, the brain can perceive a paradoxical cold sensation. As you settle into your blankets, your brain is looking for a very specific thermal trend, a slight drop in your core temperature, which acts as the biological green light for the sleep cycle to begin. 17. Saccadic masking, the blindness of motion. Your eyes are not steady cameras. They are constantly flicking back and forth in rapid, jerky movements called saccades. If your brain processed the visual input during these high-speed jumps, your perception of the world would be a nauseating, motion-blurred mess. To solve this, your brain performs a feat of editing called saccadic masking. It effectively freezes or deletes the visual feed for the few milliseconds that your eye is in motion. You are technically blind for a total of roughly 40 to 90 minutes every day during these tiny intervals. To hide this gap in your vision, your brain uses a trick called chronostasis, where it takes the first clear image after the eye movement and backfills it into the time you were moving. This is why a ticking clock's first second often feels like it lasts much longer than the others. 19. Synesthesia, the rainbow of perception. For the vast majority of people, the senses are like separate rooms with closed doors. But for some, known as synesthetes, those doors are wide open, leading to a phenomenon called synesthesia. This is a cross-wiring of perception where a stimulus in one sense involuntarily triggers an experience in another. A synesthete might see a jagged neon blue shape every time they hear a middle C on a piano, or they might taste the flavor of cold copper when they look at the number 5. While this sounds like a rare neurological quirk, Research suggests we all have a synesthetic core. For example, most people associate high-pitched sounds with light colors and low-pitched sounds with dark ones. This suggests that our perception is a deep, poetic system of metaphors where shapes, sounds, and colors are all interconnected. 20. Interoception, the silent language of the soul. While we spend most of our lives focused on the world out there, we possess a vast sensory network dedicated entirely to the world in here. This is interoception, the perception of your body's internal state. It is managed by the insular cortex, which receives signals from your heart, lungs, gut, and bladder. Interoception is how you know you are hungry, how you feel the butterflies of anxiety in your stomach, and how you perceive the rhythm of your own heartbeat. It is the physiological basis of gut feelings. As you lay here now, taking slow, deliberate breaths, you are heightening your interoceptive awareness. By listening to this inner ocean, you are telling your brain that the internal weather is calm, which is the final requirement for drifting into sleep. 21. Change blindness, the editing room of the mind. Your brain convinces you that you are seeing a high-definition, panoramic view of your surroundings, but in reality, your attentional spotlight is incredibly narrow. This leads to a phenomenon known as change blindness. Because the brain cannot process every single detail in a scene, it focuses on the gist or the overall meaning. In famous psychological experiments, an actor might stop a stranger to ask for directions. While the stranger is distracted, a door is carried between them, and the actor is swapped for a completely different person. Shockingly, the majority of people do not notice the swap. Your perception is not a recording of the world. It is a simplified summary. This shows that we only truly see what we are consciously paying attention to, while the rest of the world remains a blurred, generalized background. Your brain is a master editor, cutting out the extraneous details to keep the narrative of your life moving forward without overwhelm. 22. The uncanny valley, the perception of almost human. There is a strange peak in our perceptual system known as the uncanny valley. We are evolutionarily tuned to find human faces comforting and recognizable. As a non-human object like a robot or a CGI character becomes more human-like, our affinity for it increases until it becomes too close to being human but isn't quite right. At that point, your perception shifts from cute to repulsive or eerie. This happens because your brain's hypersensitive social detection systems begin to treat the object as a diseased or dead human rather than a lifelike machine. It is a protective perceptual reflex, a deep-seated warning from your ancestors to be wary of things that mimic life without possessing its spark. Your brain is constantly scanning for the micro-expressions and biological jitters that signify true life, and when they are absent in a near-perfect replica, the fear center of your brain, the amygdala, sounds a silent alarm. 23. Prosopagnosia and the face processing engine. Located in the temporal lobe of your brain is a specialized region called the fusiform face area, FFA. Its sole job is to perceive and distinguish faces. Most of us can recognize thousands of different faces with ease, but some people suffer from a condition called prosopagnosia, or face blindness. For them, the features of a face, the eyes, nose, and mouth are clearly visible, but the brain cannot stitch them into a recognizable identity. They might look at their own mother and see only a collection of features without a name. This highlights that seeing a face is a separate cognitive act from recognizing a person. It is a highly specialized subroutine in your mental computer. As you drift off, your FFA is finally resting, letting go of the social world and the thousands of faces you've seen today to focus on the abstract imagery of your inner dreams. 24. The perception of gaze, the invisible ray. Humans have a unique perceptual ability to detect exactly where another person is looking, even from a great distance. This is largely due to the large amount of white sclera in the human eye compared to other primates, which makes the position of the iris highly visible. You possess a gaze detection system that is so sensitive it can feel like a physical sensation, that prickle on the back of your neck when you feel someone staring at you. While there is no actual energy beam coming from their eyes, your brain is so attuned to social threats and connections that it creates a powerful internal alert whenever someone's attentional flashlight is pointed directly at you. This gaze perception is one of the earliest social skills we develop, allowing infants to track their parents' focus long before they understand a single word of language. 25. The Thatcher effect, the logic of orientation. The Thatcher effect reveals just how much your brain relies on a top-down template to perceive faces. If you look at a photo of a face that has been turned upside down, but the eyes and mouth have been flipped to remain right side up, the face looks relatively normal at first glance. However, the moment you rotate the entire image to be right side up, the face becomes a grotesque, terrifying mask. This happens because your face processing neurons are tuned to see features in a specific upright orientation. When the face is upside down, your brain gives up on its holistic processing and looks at the features individually, missing the structural nightmare hidden within. This proves that we don't just see what is there. We see what our brain is prepared to see based on the standard orientation of a human face. 26. Amodal completion, seeing the unseen. Your brain is a master of filling in the blanks through a process called amodal completion. When you see a cat sitting behind a picket fence, you don't perceive the cat as being cut into several vertical slices. Even though your eyes are only receiving strips of cat data, your brain automatically completes the shape behind the bars, presenting you with the image of a whole, solid animal. This is an essential perceptual tool for navigating a cluttered world. It allows you to perceive objects as continuous and stable, even when they are partially obscured by shadows, furniture, or, as you lay in bed now, the folds of your heavy blankets. Your brain refuses to accept a fragmented world, constantly using its internal library of shapes to glue the pieces of reality back together for you. 27. The size-weight illusion, expectations versus gravity. Your perception of weight is not just a measurement of mass. It is heavily influenced by your visual expectations. If you are presented with two containers of the exact same weight, but one is much larger than the other, your brain will perceive the smaller one as being significantly heavier. This is the size-weight illusion. Because your brain expects the larger object to be heavy, it prepares your muscles with a certain amount of force. When the large object is light, the mismatch between your expectation and reality causes your brain to misinterpret the data. Even after you are told they weigh the same, the illusion persists. It serves as a reminder that what we feel with our bodies is often a corrected version of what we think we should be feeling, a compromise between raw touch and visual prediction. 28. Haptic perception and the language of touch. Your hands are home to a staggering density of mechanoreceptors, allowing for haptic perception. This is more than just feeling texture. It is the ability to recognize an object's shape, size, and identity through touch alone, without any visual input. By moving your fingers across a surface, your brain interprets the friction, vibration, and pressure to visualize the object in your mind. This is why you can reach into a dark drawer and find a specific key by its notches or a coin by its ridged edge. Your skin is essentially a giant, sensitive eye that perceives the world through physical contact. As you relax, these sensors are sending a safety signal to your brain, confirming the soft, familiar texture of your bedding and telling your nervous system that the environment is secure. 29. Peripheral vision, the sentinel of the dark. The center of your vision, the fovea, is packed with cones for color and detail, but the outer edges of your retinas are dominated by rods, which are far more sensitive to light and motion but cannot see color. This is why, in a dim room, you can often see a faint star or a distant object more clearly if you look slightly away from it. Your peripheral vision is your ancient sentinel. It isn't interested in what a thing is. It only cares if something is moving. It is the system that alerts you to a flicker in the corner of your eye long before you turn to see it. In the quiet of the night, your peripheral vision is the guard that scans the shadows, allowing your central consciousness to feel secure enough to withdraw into the safety of sleep. 30. The perception of self as a continuous story. Perhaps the most complex perception of all is the perception of yourself. Neuroscientists believe that the feeling of being an I sitting behind your eyes is actually a grand construction of the brain, a narrative perception. Your brain takes your memories, your current sensory input, and your future goals and weaves them into a single, continuous character. This self-model is what allows you to navigate life as a consistent person rather than a collection of random impulses. But during sleep, this model begins to dissolve. The ego relaxes its grip, the narrative becomes fluid and surreal, and the boundaries between you and the world begin to blur. You transition from being the director of your life to being a traveler in the vast, unscripted landscape of the subconscious. 31. Phantom limbs and the persistence of the cortical map. One of the most haunting examples of how perception is generated entirely within the brain is the phenomenon of phantom limbs. When a person loses an arm or a leg, they often continue to perceive the limb as if it were still there, feeling it itch, ache, or even move. This happens because the brain contains a somatosensory cortex, a physical map where every part of your body is represented. When the physical limb is gone, the map remains. The brain, craving input from that missing area, sometimes misfires or rewires itself, causing the person to perceive sensations from a hand that no longer exists. This proves that your perception of having a body is a persistent mental construct. Your brain doesn't need the actual limb to feel it. It only needs the neural representation to be active. 32. The perception of silence as a sound. For a long time, scientists debated whether silence was simply the absence of perception or a perception in itself. Recent research suggests that your brain actually hears silence as if it were a sound. When a continuous noise suddenly stops, your auditory neurons don't just go quiet. They fire a specific off-response signal. Your brain treats the beginning of a silence with the same neural urgency as the beginning of a loud noise. This is why a sudden silence in a forest or the stopping of a loud fan can feel so loud or startling. In the deep quiet of the night, your brain is actively perceiving the shape of the silence around you, using it as a canvas upon which your internal thoughts and dreams begin to be painted. 33. The inner monologue, perceiving the voice in your head. Most people experience an inner monologue, a silent voice that narrates thoughts, plans, and worries. Neuroimaging shows that when you hear this voice, your brain activates the same regions used for actual speech, such as Broca's area. This is a form of internal perception known as inner speech. Your brain is essentially performing a trick of motor simulation. It prepares the muscles to speak, but cancels the command at the last millisecond, while still allowing the auditory part of the brain to perceive the result. As you fall asleep, this inner voice often becomes fragmented or nonsensical, turning into hypnagogic speech. The random words and phrases that signal your brain is shifting from logical thought to the abstract language of dreams. 34. The Ganzfeld effect, hallucinating from boredom. Your brain is so addicted to sensory input that if you deprive it of all patterns, it will begin to manufacture its own. This is known as the Ganzfeld effect. If you were to cover your eyes with translucent halves of ping-pong balls and listen to uniform white noise, your brain, starved for edges and meaning, would start to amplify its own internal neural noise. Within minutes, people often report seeing complex hallucinations, such as soaring buildings or strange creatures. This reveals a fundamental truth of perception. The brain is an active creator. It would rather see something fake than see nothing at all. As the world goes dark tonight, your brain is preparing to flip this switch, moving from the light of the outside world to the self-generated light of your dreaming mind. 35. The waterfall illusion, neural fatigue and motion. If you stare at a waterfall for a minute and then look at the stationary rocks beside it, the rocks will appear to drift upward. This is known as the motion after effect. It occurs because your brain has specific neurons tuned to detect different directions of movement. As you watch the waterfall, your downward neurons become fatigued. When you look away, your upward neurons, which are still fresh, overpower the tired downward ones, creating the perception of motion where there is none. This demonstrates that your perception of movement is a delicate balance of competing signals. It shows that the stillness you perceive right now is actually a state of perfect equilibrium between all your motion-detecting cells. 36. Chronostasis, the second that stretches. Have you ever glanced at a ticking clock and felt like the first second you saw lasted much longer than the ones that followed? This is a perceptual glitch called chronostasis. It happens because of the saccadic masking we discussed earlier. When your eyes move rapidly to look at the clock, the brain mutes the blurry input. To prevent you from noticing this gap in your life, the brain takes the first clear image of the clock and backstretches it into the time you were moving your eyes. It essentially lies to you about the timing of the world to maintain the illusion of a continuous, gapless reality. It is a reminder that the timing of your life is an editorial choice made by your subconscious. 37. The perception of G-force and the visceral mind. Even while lying still, your body is perceiving the constant acceleration of gravity. This is managed by the vestibular-ocular reflex, which coordinates your eye movements with the movement of your head. If you were to roll over in your sleep, this system would instantly adjust your eye muscles to keep your internal horizon stable. This perception is deeply tied to your visceral nervous system, which is why the dropping sensation of an elevator or a plane's turbulence can cause such an immediate feeling of nausea or anxiety. Your brain is a master of physics, calculating the vectors of motion and gravity every second to ensure you never feel untethered from the world. 38. Hallucinations of the tired mind, hypnagogia. As you transition from wakefulness to sleep, you enter a state called hypnagogia. In this threshold, the boundary between perception and imagination becomes porous. You may perceive bright geometric patterns, the sound of your name being called, or the sensation of falling, which often triggers the hypnic jerk. These are not dreams yet, but rather the brain's startup sequence for the dream state. During hypnagogia, the frontal lobes, the parts of your brain responsible for logic and reality testing, begin to power down, allowing the sensory centers to play with random neural firing. It is the waiting room of sleep, where the rules of reality first begin to soften and bend. 39. The perception of distance through atmospheric perspective. Your brain uses several shortcuts to perceive how far away an object is. One of the most beautiful is atmospheric perspective, because the air is not perfectly clear, but filled with dust and moisture. Distant objects, like mountains on the horizon, appear bluer, paler, and less detailed than objects close to you. Your brain has learned this rule of physics so deeply that it automatically assigns a far away label to anything that looks hazy or blue-shifted. Even in your dreams, your brain will use this haze to create a sense of vast, open space, showing that your perception of depth is built on a lifetime of observing how light interacts with the very air you breathe. 40. The binding problem, stitching the world together. The most mysterious part of perception is how the brain binds everything together. When you look at a blue bird flying, the color is processed in one part of your brain, the shape in another, and the motion in a third. There is no single theater where these things meet. And yet, you don't perceive a blueness and a bird shape and a movement separately. You perceive a single unified blue bird. This is called the binding problem. Neuroscientists believe the brain solves this by making all the relevant neurons fire in a perfectly synchronized rhythm. Right now, as you listen to my voice and feel the weight of your body, your brain is performing this master symphony, binding 1,000 different signals into the single, peaceful moment you are experiencing. 41. The rubber hand illusion, rewriting the body schema. One of the most startling proofs that your perception of self is a fragile construction is the rubber hand illusion. In this famous experiment, a person's real hand is hidden from view while a realistic rubber hand is placed on the table in front of them. The researcher strokes both the real hand and the rubber hand with a brush at the exact same time. Within minutes, the subject's brain, confused by the synchronized visual and tactile data, actually adopts the rubber hand as its own. When the researcher suddenly strikes the rubber hand with a hammer, the subject flinches in genuine pain. This reveals that your brain's body map is incredibly plastic. It is constantly using a multisensory integration process to decide where your body ends and the world begins. Even as you lie still tonight, your brain is maintaining this invisible boundary. But as you drift into sleep, this map softens, which is why you can perceive yourself having an entirely different body, or even no body at all, within the landscape of a dream. 42. Gustatory perception and the flavor hallucination. We often use the words taste and flavor interchangeably, but in the world of perception, they are vastly different. Taste is a simple chemical sense limited to 5 profiles: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. Flavor, however, is a complex multisensory hallucination created by your brain. Approximately 80% of what you perceive as flavor actually comes from retronasal olfaction, the aromas that travel from the back of your mouth up into your nasal cavity as you chew. When you add the crunch of a texture, auditory, and the burn of a spice, thermoception, your brain stitches these disparate signals into the unified experience of a strawberry or a piece of chocolate. This is why food loses its flavor when you have a cold. Your taste buds are fine, but your brain can no longer access the olfactory data needed to complete the sensory puzzle. 43. The Mona Lisa effect, the perception of social presence. The human brain is hyper-attuned to the perception of eye contact, a survival trait that allowed our ancestors to know when they were being watched by a predator or a rival. This manifests in the Mona Lisa effect, where the eyes in a portrait appear to follow you around the room. This happens because the person in the image was looking directly into the camera lens. Since the image is a 2D flat surface, the geometric relationship of the pupils and the corners of the eyes doesn't change regardless of the angle from which you view it. Your brain, which is hardwired to detect direct gaze, interprets this static geometry as active tracking. In the quiet of your room, your brain is still scanning for these social cues. But as you settle into the dark, it finally accepts the absence of any watching eyes, allowing your social defense systems to power down for the night. 44. Phantom vibrations and the digital sense. In the modern era, our perceptual systems have actually evolved to include our technology through a phenomenon known as phantom vibration syndrome. Many people report perceiving their phone vibrating in their pocket, only to find the phone isn't there or hasn't gone off. This occurs because your brain, in a state of constant anticipation for a social reward, like a text or notification, has become hypersensitive to the subtle tactile noise of your clothing rubbing against your skin. It misinterprets these random microsensations as the specific frequency of a phone motor. This is a form of signal detection theory, where your brain would rather have a false alarm than miss a potential connection. As you leave your phone aside tonight, your brain eventually stops this hypervigilance, moving away from digital alerts and back toward the natural rhythms of the body. 45. The perception of pain as a decision, not a fact. One of the most misunderstood aspects of human perception is that pain is not a signal sent to the brain, but a decision made by the brain. When you stub your toe, nociceptors send a signal of potential tissue damage to the spinal cord. Your brain then evaluates this signal against your current environment, your past memories, and your stress levels. If you were running for your life from a lion, your brain might choose to mute that pain perception entirely so you can keep moving. This is known as gate control theory. Pain is an output, not an input. It is your brain's way of demanding your attention. This is why, as you relax into a state of deep comfort tonight, your minor aches and pains often seem to diminish. Your brain, sensing no threat, chooses to turn down the volume on those signals, allowing comfort to become your dominant perception. 46. The sound of your own voice, bone conduction. Have you ever heard a recording of your own voice and felt it sounded wrong or higher than you expected? This is because of a quirk in auditory perception. When you speak, you hear your voice through two different channels: air conduction, sound traveling through the air and into your ear canal, and bone conduction, vibrations traveling through your skull directly to the inner ear. Bone conduction boosts the lower frequencies, making your voice sound deeper and richer to you than it does to the rest of the world. This means that the you perceive is literally a different sound than the you the world perceives. This internal, resonant version of yourself is the one that speaks in your thoughts, a private frequency that only you will ever truly hear. 47. Negative afterimages, the tired eyes ghost. Your eyes perceive the world through a delicate chemical balance. When you stare at a bright color, let's say a vibrant green, the photoreceptors in your eyes that detect green eventually become exhausted and bleached. When you suddenly look at a white wall, those tired green receptors can't fire, but the red and blue receptors are fresh and ready. As a result, you will perceive a ghost image in the opposite color, magenta. This is called a negative afterimage. It is a literal chemical shadow of what you were just looking at. It serves as a reminder that your perception is always a comparison, between what is happening now and what happened a moment ago. As you close your eyes in the dark, you may see these fading colorful blooms, the final chemical echoes of the day's light being recycled by your retinas. 48. The perception of empty space. We often think of space as the nothingness between objects, but your brain perceives emptiness as a positive quality. This is called void perception. Your brain uses depth cues, like how fast objects move relative to each other, motion parallax, and the tension in your eye muscles as they focus, accommodation, to construct a 3D volume of the air around you. This is why a small, cluttered room can feel suffocating, while a vast, dark cathedral can feel lofty or intimidating, even if the air quality is exactly the same. Your brain is constantly feeling the volume of the space you are in. Tonight, as the walls of your room disappear into the shadows, your brain lets go of these spatial boundaries, allowing your mental space to expand into the infinite, borderless dimensions of your dreams. 49. Haptic after sensations, the ghost of the world. Just as your eyes can see after images, your sense of touch can experience haptic after sensations. If you wear a heavy hat all day and then take it off, you may still perceive the pressure of the hat on your forehead for several minutes. This is because your mechanoreceptors have been compressed for so long that they take time to reset to their neutral state, and your brain continues to process the expected pressure. This lingering perception is a bridge between the physical world and memory. As you settle into bed, you may feel the ghost of the shoes you wore or the bag you carried, but as these neural echoes fade, your brain replaces them with the light, floating perception of weightlessness that often precedes sleep. 50. The third ear and sound localization. Your brain is a master of acoustic geometry. Because your ears are located on opposite sides of your head, a sound coming from the right will hit your right ear a few microseconds before it hits your left. This tiny gap is called the interaural time difference. Furthermore, the sound will be slightly louder in the right ear, the interaural level difference. Your brain calculates these microscopic differences to perceive exactly where a sound is in 3D space, even behind you or above you. It is so precise it can detect a shift in sound location of just 1 degree. In the quiet of the night, this system is on high gain, which is why a small floorboard creak can be so accurately localized. But as you sink deeper into sleep, your brain decouples from this 3D map, turning the external sounds of the house into the internal, directionless sounds of the dream world. 51. The golden ratio of perception and aesthetic preference. Your brain possesses an innate, almost mathematical preference for certain proportions, most notably the golden ratio, $/phi/ approximate $1.618. When you perceive a face, a flower, or a piece of architecture that adheres to these proportions, your brain processes the information more efficiently, triggering a release of dopamine that we subjectively experience as beauty. This isn't just a cultural learned behavior, it is an efficiency of perception. Proportional symmetry is easier for the visual cortex to encode and store. As you relax tonight, your brain is seeking a different kind of symmetry, the rhythmic balance of your breathing and the steady pulse of your heart. When these internal proportions align, your perception shifts from the jagged alertness of the day to the smooth, aesthetic harmony of deep rest. 52. Auditory pareidolia, the music in the noise. Have you ever been lying in bed and suddenly felt as though you could hear distant music, or perhaps a muffled conversation, coming from the steady hum of a fan or an air conditioner? This is auditory pareidolia. Much like seeing faces in clouds, your brain is a meaning-making machine that hates random noise. When presented with the white noise of a fan, which contains a broad spectrum of frequencies, your brain's language and music centers try to filter that noise into something familiar. It picks out faint patterns and amplifies them until you perceive a melody or a voice. This reveals that your perception is always a dialogue between the external world and your internal library of sounds. In the silence of the night, your brain is simply trying to find a story in the hum. 53. The filling in of the blind spot. We briefly touched on the blind spot, but the complexity of how the brain manages it is worth a deeper look. The filling in process is not just a simple copy-paste of the surrounding colors. If you were to look at a grid of black and white lines with your blind spot positioned over a break in those lines, your brain wouldn't just paint a gray smudge. It would actually complete the lines, perceiving a perfect, unbroken grid. This suggests that your brain has a conceptual understanding of the world. It doesn't just see pixels, it sees rules. It perceives that a line should continue, so it creates the line. This is a powerful metaphor for our lives. We often perceive what should be there based on our beliefs, filling in the gaps of our experiences with the logic of our expectations. 54. The perception of time in dreams, the inception myth. There is a common perception that time moves differently in dreams, that hours can pass in the dream world while only minutes pass in reality. However, sleep studies using lucid dreamers, who can signal the researchers with eye movements, have shown that dream time is remarkably close to real time. If you are asked to count to 10 in a dream, it takes roughly 10 seconds of real-world time. The illusion of long dreams usually comes from the way the brain edits the dream narrative. Just like a movie uses jump cuts to show a character traveling across the world in 5 seconds, your dreaming mind skips the boring parts of the story. When you wake up, you perceive a long, epic journey, but your brain was actually just masterfully stitching together brief, vivid scenes. 54. The perception of time in dreams, the inception myth. There is a common perception that time moves differently in dreams, that hours can pass in the dream world while only minutes pass in reality. However, sleep studies using lucid dreamers, who can signal the researchers with eye movements, have shown that dream time is remarkably close to real time. If you are asked to count to 10 in a dream, it takes roughly 10 seconds of real-world time. The illusion of long dreams usually comes from the way the brain edits the dream narrative. Just like a movie uses jump cuts to show a character traveling across the world in 5 seconds, your dreaming mind skips the boring parts of the story. When you wake up, you perceive a long, epic journey, but your brain was actually just masterfully stitching together brief, vivid scenes. 56. The doorway effect, spatial boundaries, and memory. Have you ever walked into a room with a specific purpose, only to completely forget why you are there the moment you cross the threshold? This is a perceptual phenomenon known as the doorway effect. Your brain perceives a doorway as a boundary between different mental contexts. When you move from one room to another, your brain performs a file purge, clearing out the short-term information from the previous episode to make room for the data in the new environment. Your perception of space is tied directly to your memory architecture. As you lie in the room of your sleep tonight, your brain is closing the door on the room of your day, purposefully letting go of the day's to-do lists to prepare for the blank slate of the subconscious. 57. The perception of magnitude, Weber's law. Your senses do not perceive changes in a linear way. They perceive them in a relative way. This is known as Weber's law. If you are holding a 10-pound weight and someone adds 1 pound, you will easily perceive the difference. But if you are holding a 100-pound weight and someone adds 1 pound, you likely won't feel it at all. The just noticeable difference is a percentage, not a fixed amount. This applies to everything: the brightness of a light, the volume of a whisper, and even the emotional weight of a stressor. In the quiet of the night, because the baseline of noise and light is so low, your brain becomes hypersensitive to the smallest changes. A tiny tick of a clock feels monumental because there is nothing else to compare it to. 58. Color constancy, the brain's white balance. If you take a white piece of paper into a room with yellow light, the paper is technically reflecting yellow light into your eyes. If you take it under a blue sky, it reflects blue. Yet, in both cases, you perceive the paper as white. This is color constancy. Your brain subtracts the color of the ambient light source to reveal the true color of the object. It is performing a real-time, sophisticated white balance check. This proves that your perception is not a measurement of the light hitting your eyes, but an interpretation of what that light means in context. Your brain isn't interested in the raw data of the light. It wants to know the truth of the object, a reminder that your mind is always looking past the surface to find the essence of things. 59. The own age bias in face perception. Our ability to perceive and recognize faces is not uniform across all ages. Most humans exhibit an own age bias, where we are significantly better at recognizing and distinguishing the faces of people who are in a similar age group to ourselves. This is a result of perceptual narrowing. Your brain becomes an expert in the features it sees most often in its social circle. As a child, you are an expert at peer faces. As you age, your face processing software updates to prioritize the faces of your contemporaries. This shows that your variability to see others is shaped by the community you live in. Tonight, as you withdraw from the social world, these biases fade, and your brain begins to generate the faces of dreams, a mixture of everyone you have ever known, across every age. 60. The perception of flow and the loss of self. When you are deeply immersed in a task, be it painting, coding, or even reading a captivating book, you may enter a state of flow. In this state, your perception of time vanishes, and, most interestingly, your perception of self disappears. Brain scans show that the default mode network, the area responsible for self-referential thought and ego, goes quiet. You stop perceiving yourself as an observer and start perceiving yourself as the action itself. This is one of the most restorative states the human mind can experience. Sleep is the ultimate flow state. As you drift off, you are letting go of the observer entirely, merging with the silent, effortless process of the night. 61. The flash lag effect, a brain that predicts the future. One of the most mind-bending examples of your brain's predictive nature is the flash lag effect. If you watch a moving disc on a screen and a light flashes at the exact moment the disc passes a certain point, you will perceive the flash as being behind the disc. Even though they are perfectly aligned in physical reality, your brain knows that its own processing speed is slow. To compensate for the 100 millisecond delay in your neural wiring, your brain pushes the moving object forward in your mind, guessing where it should be by the time the image reaches your consciousness. It is quite literally a form of biological future prediction. Your brain doesn't show you where things are, it shows you where they are going to be. This ensures that when you reach out to catch a falling glass, your hand arrives at the right place at the right time, navigating a world that your mind has pre-rendered for your success. 62. The sense of presence and the hidden sentinel. Have you ever been alone in a quiet room and felt an undeniable, prickling sensation that someone was standing just behind you, even though you knew the house was empty? This is often called the sense of presence or feeling of a presence, FOP. Neuroscientists have discovered that this is actually a glitch in your proprioception and self-localization systems. When the brain's signals for your own body position and your personal space become slightly desynchronized, often due to extreme fatigue, high altitude, or the onset of sleep, the brain misinterprets its own sensory feedback as belonging to someone else. It projects your own self into the space beside you. It is a hauntingly beautiful reminder that the line between me and not me is a fragile neural boundary. As you drift off, your brain finally recalibrates, pulling your presence back inward and allowing you to feel truly alone and safe in the dark. 63. Synesthetic colors and impossible hues. Most of us perceive the world through three types of color receptors, cones, but our brains are theoretically capable of perceiving impossible colors that don't exist in the normal Newtonian spectrum. These are known as chimerical colors, like Stygian blue, a blue that is simultaneously as dark as black, or self-luminous red. You can experience these by fatiguing one set of color receptors and then switching your gaze to a different colored field. This proves that color is merely a ratio of neural firing. Your brain is a canvas with a much larger palette than the physical world provides. In the vivid landscape of your dreams, these constraints are removed entirely. You may perceive colors that have no name in the waking world, vibrant hues that exist only in the unique chemical environment of your REM cycle. 64. The rubber pencil illusion, the persistence of vision. If you hold a pencil by its tip and wiggle it up and down at a specific frequency, the solid wood will appear to turn into flexible rubber. This is an illusion born from the way your brain processes temporal resolution. Your eyes are constantly sampling the world, but they don't do so in a smooth stream. They take snapshots. When the pencil moves faster than your brain can refresh the image, The trailing images of the pencil's previous positions blur together with the current one. Your brain, trying to make sense of the conflicting data, smooths the motion into a curved, rubbery shape. This reveals that our perception of solidity is a conclusion the brain reaches based on how things move. As you settle into your blankets, your brain's sample rate begins to slow down, and the rigid, hard edges of the day's reality begin to soften and become just as flexible as that rubber pencil. 65. The third ear and the shadow of sound. Your ears are not just passive funnels. They are active participants in creating your 3D soundscape. The complex folds and ridges of your outer ear, called the pinna, are designed to bounce incoming sound waves in specific ways. Depending on whether a sound comes from above, below, or behind you, these ridges change the color or frequency profile of the sound before it ever reaches your eardrum. Your brain has spent your entire life learning this acoustic shadow and uses it to pinpoint sounds with incredible accuracy. This is why a recorded sound played through headphones often feels like it's inside your head, while a real sound feels out there. Tonight, as you lie still, your brain is using these subtle echoes to confirm that the house is quiet and the perimeter is secure, allowing you to relinquish your auditory watch and sink into the silence. 66. The perception of magnitude and the power law. Our perception of the world is not one-to-one with physical reality. It follows Stevens's power law. This law states that the subjective intensity of a sensation grows at a different rate than the physical intensity. For example, to perceive a light as being twice as bright, you actually need to increase its physical energy by much more than double. Conversely, our perception of electric shock is hypersensitive. A small increase in current feels like a massive increase in pain. This nonlinear perception is a biological survival strategy. It makes us incredibly sensitive to things that can hurt us while allowing us to normalize things that are constant, like sunlight. In the stillness of your room, your brain is resetting its scales. The loud stressors of the day are being reweighted, becoming smaller and more manageable as your baseline shifts toward the profound quiet of sleep. 67. The Poggendorf illusion and the geometry of the mind. If you look at a diagonal line that is interrupted by a vertical gray bar, the two ends of the line no longer appear to be aligned. They look offset. This is the Poggendorf illusion. It occurs because your visual cortex overestimates the magnitude of acute angles and underestimates obtuse ones. Your brain isn't a perfect geometric tool. It has a built-in bias for horizontal and vertical lines because those are the most common orientations in the natural world, the horizon and the trees. Your mind corrects the geometry of the world to fit its internal blueprint. This is a reminder that we don't see the world as it is. We see it as our brain thinks it should be. As you close your eyes, you are leaving the world of rigid geometry behind, entering a dream space where lines can bend and angles can change according to the logic of your heart. 68. The cocktail party effect and attentional filtering. At any given moment, you are being bombarded by 1,000 different signals, but your brain uses a sophisticated selective attention filter known as the cocktail party effect. This allows you to tune in to a single conversation in a loud, crowded room while tuning out the background noise. However, your brain is still monitoring that background noise on a subconscious level. If someone across the room says your name, you will instantly perceive it, even if you weren't listening. This proves that your perception is a two-tiered system, a conscious spotlight and a subconscious guard. As you prepare for sleep, the spotlight is turning off, but the guard remains, listening for the specific, familiar patterns that signify safety or the rare, sharp patterns that signify a need to wake. 69. The perception of affordances. When you look at an object, you don't just see its shape and color. You see what you can do with it. This is the perception of affordances. When you see a chair, your brain immediately perceives sittability. When you see a handle, you perceive pullability. This perception happens in the dorsal stream of your visual system, which is dedicated to action. You see the world as a map of potential movements. This is why a cluttered room can feel busy to a tired mind. Your brain is involuntarily calculating all the ways you could interact with every object. By clearing your space and lying in the dark, you are removing these affordances. giving your motor brain permission to finally stop planning and start resting. 70. The weight of your thoughts, cognitive load. Perception is not free. It requires a massive amount of metabolic energy. When you are under a high cognitive load, such as trying to solve a problem or worrying about the future, your literal perception of the physical world changes. Studies show that when people are mentally exhausted, they perceive hills as being steeper and distances as being longer. Your brain is conserving resources by discouraging you from physical exertion. This proves that your physical reality is deeply tied to your mental state. As you let go of your worries tonight, the hills of your life begin to level out. The world becomes flatter, easier, and more inviting, leading you down the gentle, effortless path toward the center of your dreams. 71. Biological motion, the perception of life in 11 dots. Your brain is so exquisitely tuned to the presence of other living beings that it can perceive a human presence from the most minimal data possible. In studies of biological motion, researchers place just 11 small dots of light on a person's major joints, ankles, knees, hips, elbows, wrists, and head, and record them moving in total darkness. When the dots are stationary, they look like a random cluster of stars. But the moment they begin to move, your brain instantly perceives a human being. Not only that, but within a fraction of a second, you can perceive the person's gender, their mood, and even whether they are someone you know simply by the rhythm of the motion. This shows that your perception is a master of kinematics. You don't need to see skin or hair to recognize a soul. As you lie still tonight, this motion detector is finally at peace, knowing that the only rhythm in the room is the slow, safe rise and fall of your own chest. 72. The alien hand and the perception of agency. One of the most profound perceptions we possess is the sense of agency, the feeling that you are the one moving your hand. In rare neurological cases known as alien hand syndrome, the connection between the brain's motor planning and its conscious perception is severed. A person's hand might reach out and grab an object, or even try to button a shirt, while the person themselves feels as though the hand is being controlled by an external force. This proves that intention and action are two separate perceptions that your brain usually binds together. You only feel like the owner of your actions because your brain sends a copy of its motor command, an efferent copy, to your sensory centers, telling them to expect a movement. In dreams, this agency becomes fluid. You might perceive yourself moving without effort or being moved by the world as the brain experiments with the very boundaries of will. 73. Emotional contagion, the perception of another's heart. We often think of emotions as internal states, but they are also things we perceive in others through mirror neurons. When you look at a person who is frowning in pain or smiling in joy, your brain doesn't just register the fact. It actually simulates the same neural firing patterns in your own motor and emotional centers. You perceive their emotion by feeling a microversion of it yourself. This is the biological basis of empathy. Your brain is a social antenna, constantly sampling the emotional frequency of the room to ensure you are in sync with your tribe. Tonight, as you withdraw into the solitude of sleep, this antenna is retracting. You are moving away from the perceived emotions of the world and back into the pure, uninfluenced core of your own being. 74. The ventriloquist effect, how space dominates sound. Your brain has a hierarchy of senses, and in the world of spatial localization, vision is the undisputed king. This leads to the ventriloquist effect. When you watch a movie, the sound is actually coming from speakers to the left or right of the screen, but because your eyes see the actor's mouth moving in the center, your brain relocates the sound to match the visual. It literally forces your ears to lie to you so that the world makes sense. Your perception prioritizes coherence over accuracy. This is why, in the dark, your hearing becomes so much more accurate. Without the bully of vision to tell them where to look, your ears can finally report the true, raw location of every tiny house sound, from the settling of the foundation to the wind against the glass. 75. The white bear effect and the perception of thought. The harder you try not to perceive something, the more prominent it becomes in your mind. This is known as ironic process theory, or the white bear effect. If I tell you, do not think of a white bear, Your brain must constantly monitor your thoughts to ensure the bear isn't there, which, paradoxically, keeps the perception of the bear active in your consciousness. This is why trying to fall asleep is often the very thing that keeps us awake. By checking for sleep, you are perceiving your own wakefulness. The secret to the transition is the letting go of the monitor. As you listen to these facts, your mind is being gently occupied, allowing that monitoring system to relax its guard until the white bear of the day finally wanders off into the woods of the subconscious. 76. The Ponzo illusion, perception of the infinite. When you look at two identical horizontal lines placed between two converging vertical lines, like railroad tracks receding into the distance, you will perceive the top line as being much longer than the bottom one. This is the Ponzo illusion. Your brain sees the converging lines as a cue for depth and knows that objects farther away should appear smaller. If the top line is the same physical size as the bottom one on your retina, your brain recalculates its size, assuming it must be huge to look that big from so far away. This shows that your brain is constantly doing 3D trigonometry behind the scenes. It is never just seeing shapes. It is always calculating a world of vast distances and grand scales, even when you are just looking at a flat surface. 77. The perception of social warmth and physical heat. The human brain uses the same neural pathways to perceive physical warmth and social warmth. In fascinating embodied cognition studies, people who were asked to hold a cup of hot coffee perceived a stranger as being warmer and more trustworthy than those who held an iced coffee. Similarly, feeling socially excluded can make a person perceive the actual temperature of a room as being several degrees colder. Our metaphors are literal. Cold people and warm hearts are perceptions rooted in the insular cortex. As you tuck yourself into your bed tonight, the physical warmth of your blankets is actually signaling to your brain a sense of social safety. It is a biological hug that tells your nervous system it is safe to stop perceiving threats and start perceiving peace. 78. Peripheral drift and the illusion of motion. The peripheral drift illusion, often seen in the famous rotating snakes image, is a static picture that appears to swirl and move as you shift your gaze. This happens because your peripheral vision processes high-contrast information faster than low-contrast information. The different shading in the image triggers your motion-detecting neurons in a specific sequence, tricking your brain into perceiving a flow where there is only ink on paper. This is a reminder that motion is a calculation, not a fact. In the half-light of your bedroom, you might see similar drifts in the shadows or the folds of a curtain. These aren't real movements, but the final visual echoes of a brain that is still tuned for a world of activity, slowly downshifting its engines for the night. 79. The self-serving bias of perception. We often think of our perception of others as objective, but it is deeply influenced by the self-serving bias. We are hardwired to perceive our own successes as the result of our character and our failures as the result of circumstance. Conversely, we often perceive others' failures as character flaws. This is a perceptual defense shield that helps maintain our self-esteem. But as you enter the pre-sleep state, these biases often melt away. In the quiet honesty of the dark, our perception of ourselves and others becomes more balanced and compassionate. We stop defending our narrative and start simply being, allowing for a more authentic and peaceful connection to the world we are about to leave behind for the night. 80. The hypnic jerk, the perception of falling. Just as you are about to cross the final threshold into sleep, you might experience a sudden, violent twitch that feels like you've just tripped or fallen. This is the hypnic jerk. One leading theory is that as your muscles relax completely, your vestibular system, your sense of balance, misinterprets the sudden lack of muscle tension as a fall through space. In a split-second panic, your brain sends an emergency motor blast to your limbs to catch yourself. It is a perceptual error born from the brain's transition between two different states of being. It is the final, jerky test of the equipment before the autopilot of sleep takes over completely. Once the jerk passes, a deep, heavy wave of relaxation usually follows, as the brain finally accepts that you are on solid ground. 81. The overview effect, the perception of universal connection. One of the most profound shifts in human perception ever recorded is known as the overview effect, a phenomenon experienced by astronauts when they view the Earth from space for the first time. In our daily lives, our perception is ground level. We see borders, we see distance, we see the us and the them of human conflict. But from orbit, the brain is suddenly confronted with a singular, glowing, and incredibly fragile blue marble suspended in a vacuum of absolute nothingness. The brain's habitual categories of perception, such as nations, religions, or personal grievances, suddenly collapse under the weight of a new, overwhelming gestalt. Astronauts report a visceral, cognitive shift toward a perception of oneness and an intense desire to protect the collective life of the planet. This proves that our worldview is literally a product of our physical perspective. When you change the scale of what you see, you change the nature of how you think. As you lie in the dark tonight, you are experiencing a small version of this. As the details of your room fade, your perception can expand beyond your immediate worries, allowing you to feel the quiet, shared rhythm of the millions of people drifting into sleep along with you. 82. The Ganzfeld of the night and the brain's internal cinema. When you are in a state of total sensory uniformity, like laying in a pitch-black room with the soft, white noise of a fan, you are entering what psychologists call a Ganzfeld, German for complete field. Your brain is an organ that evolved to detect contrast and edges. When it is deprived of these, it becomes starved for information. In this state of sensory hunger, the neural gain or volume in your visual and auditory cortex is turned up to its maximum setting. The brain begins to interpret its own internal electrical hum as external reality. This is why, in the moments before sleep, you may begin to see phosphenes, swirling clouds of color, geometric grids, or even flashes of light behind your closed eyelids. You are witnessing the raw data of your own neurons firing. It is the beginning of the internal cinema, where the brain stops being a window to the outside world and starts being a projector for the dream world. This perception is the bridge between the logic of the day and the abstract poetry of the night. 83. The perception of invisible colors and the limits of language. Our perception is often limited not by our eyes, but by our vocabulary. A fascinating area of study in linguistic relativity suggests that if a culture does not have a word for a specific color, its people may actually find it difficult to perceive that color as distinct from others. For example, many ancient languages did not have a word for blue, often describing the sea as wine dark. Studies with modern tribes who have multiple words for different shades of green show that they can perceive minute differences in foliage that are completely invisible to Western eyes. This reveals that your perception is trained by your culture and language. You see the world through a filter of the words you know. As you drift towards sleep, however, the language centers of your brain begin to go offline. You are moving into a prelinguistic state of perception where colors, feelings, and sensations exist in their raw, wordless form. A world where a feeling doesn't need a name to be real. 84. The alien hand and the split-second perception of will. Your sense of agency, the belief that you are the author of your own movements, is actually a split-second perception that occurs after the brain has already initiated the movement. In the 1980s, researcher Benjamin Libet discovered that the brain's readiness potential, the electrical signal to move a finger, fires about 300 to 500 milliseconds before the person consciously perceives the will to move. This suggests that your conscious mind is often like a spokesperson for a government that has already made its decision. You perceive yourself as being in control because your brain creates a narrative of intent to match the action. This is why, in sleep, you can feel as though you are a passenger in your own body, or why your limbs might twitch the hypnic jerk without your permission. Your brain is a complex machine of many parts, and tonight, the spokesperson of your conscious will is finally going on vacation, leaving the hidden committees of your subconscious to run the dream world. 85. The golden ratio of beauty mathematical perception. Your brain is a secret mathematician. When you perceive a face, a flower, or a seashell and find it beautiful, you are often unconsciously recognizing the golden ratio, $1.618. Research shows that the human brain processes shapes and patterns that follow this ratio significantly faster and with less metabolic energy than those that don't. This efficiency is perceived by the mind as a feeling of rightness, harmony, or aesthetic pleasure. Evolution has tuned your perception to favor these patterns because they often signal health, vitality, and biological order. This means that your subjective taste is actually rooted in an objective neural economy. As you settle into sleep, your brain is looking for a different kind of golden ratio, the perfect harmonic balance between your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your respiratory rhythm. When these biological proportions are aligned, your brain perceives the ultimate form of beauty, a deep, restorative, and perfectly balanced state of peace. 86. The rubber hand illusion and the plasticity of the soul. The rubber hand illusion is perhaps the most striking evidence that your perception of self is not a fixed biological truth, but a fragile, flickering hypothesis generated by your brain in real time. In this experiment, a person's real hand is hidden behind a screen, and a realistic rubber hand is placed in front of them. The researcher then uses two small brushes to stroke both the real hand and the rubber hand with perfect synchronicity. Within seconds, a profound perceptual merger occurs. Because your brain sees the brush touching the rubber hand and feels the sensation in the real hand at the exact same moment, it resolves the conflict by simply adopting the rubber hand. The brain's body schema in the parietal lobe literally rewrites itself, and you begin to perceive the rubber object as part of your living being. If the researcher suddenly stabs the rubber hand with a needle, your brain triggers a full fight or flight stress response, and you feel a visceral surge of phantom pain. This proves that the boundary of you is an elective choice made by your neurons based on the consistency of the data they receive. As you lie in bed tonight, this self-map is beginning to loosen its grip, which is why, in the moments before sleep, you may feel as though your body is expanding, floating, or dissolving into the mattress. 87. The perception of phantom limbs and the internal map. Even when a part of the physical body is gone, the brain's perception of it can remain for a lifetime. This is the mystery of the phantom limb. When a person loses an arm or a leg, they often continue to perceive the missing limb with startling vividness. They feel it itch, they feel the warmth of a glove, or they feel the clenching of fingers that are no longer there. This happens because the somatosensory homunculus, a physical map of your body etched into the folds of your brain, remains intact. The area of the brain dedicated to that missing limb is still hungry for input. Sometimes the brain area for the face will begin to grow into the empty hand area. When this happens, the person might perceive a touch on their cheek as a touch on their phantom thumb. This reveals that your perception of having a body is a persistent mental construct. Your brain doesn't need the actual flesh to create the feeling of being whole. Tonight, as your physical senses dim, this internal map becomes the only world you inhabit, allowing you to walk, run, and fly in your dreams with a body that exists only in the sparking architecture of your mind. 88. Shadow perception and the anima of the dark. The way we perceive shadows is a masterclass in unconscious inference. Your brain does not see a shadow as a dark patch on the ground. It perceives it as a subtraction of light from a 3D object. This is a crucial distinction. If a shadow moves in a way that is inconsistent with the object casting it, your brain immediately perceives the shadow as a living thing, a phenomenon that has fueled folklore and ghost stories for millennia. This is because your dorsal stream, the part of your visual system that detects motion, is hypersensitive to biological movement. In the dim light of your bedroom, your brain is performing Bayesian guessing. It takes the ambiguous shape of a shadow on the wall and tries to fit it to a prior model, like a person or a tree. As your logic centers power down, these guesses become more creative and less grounded in reality, turning the familiar shadows of your room into the fluid, shifting characters of your dreams. You are the director of this shadow play, using the absence of light to create the presence of a story. 89. The sense of agency in dreaming and the lucid bridge. Usually, your perception of will and the world's reaction are perfectly locked together. If you decide to lift your arm, you perceive it lifting. But in the strange land of lucid dreaming, this perception takes on a supernatural dimension. A lucid dreamer perceives that they are within a simulation, and for the first time, the sense of agency is no longer tied to the laws of physics. They can perceive themselves flying simply by willing the horizon to drop. This reveals that the feeling of effort we experience in daily life is actually a perceptual feedback loop created by the brain to help us navigate gravity. In the dream state, the brain can decouple from the vestibular system, the inner ear's balance. This is why dream movement often feels weightless or ethereal. Your brain is simulating motion without the drag of physical sensory feedback. You are currently on the bridge to this state, where the effort of existing is about to be replaced by the effortlessness of the imagination. 90. The perception of temperature in dreams, thermal hallucination. One of the most overlooked aspects of perception is that your brain can hallucinate temperature just as vividly as it can hallucinate sights or sounds. Have you ever had a dream where you were walking through snow and felt a biting, literal cold, or stood near a fire and felt a radiant, comforting heat? This is known as thermal imagery. Because your brain's hypothalamus, the thermometer of the body, is directly connected to your emotional and memory centers. It can replay the neural firing patterns of being cold or being hot during REM sleep. Interestingly, your physical body's real temperature can bleed into the dream. If your blanket falls off and you become physically chilly, your brain might perceive a dreamscape of an Arctic tundra to explain the sensation. Your perception is always looking for a why for every what. As you settle into the warmth of your bed, your brain is recording the safety and comfort, preparing to use it as the thermal foundation for the peaceful journeys you are about to take. 91. The sense of presence and the neural ghost in the room. The sense of presence is one of the most haunting and misunderstood perceptions in human psychology. It is that undeniable, prickling sensation that someone or something is standing just behind you, even when you know for a certainty that you are alone in a locked room. For centuries, this was attributed to spirits or the supernatural, but modern neuroscience has pinpointed a glitch in the brain's self-monitoring system. Deep within the temporoparietal junction, your brain maintains a constant 3D model of your own body. When this area is stimulated or becomes fatigued by the transition into sleep, the brain signals for your own self can become slightly desynchronized from your physical position. In a desperate attempt to make sense of this mismatched data, your brain projects your own self-signal into the external space beside you. You aren't perceiving a ghost. You are perceiving a double of your own neural signature that has been mislocalized by a tired mind. As you settle deeper into your pillows, this projected self eventually retracts, pulling back into the center of your consciousness and allowing the room to feel truly, peacefully empty and secure. 92. The Ganzfeld effect and the hallucinations of sensory hunger. When you are in a state of total sensory uniformity, such as lying in a pitch-black room with the unchanging, soft, white noise of a fan, you enter a state known as the Ganzfeld, German for complete field. Your brain is an organ that evolved specifically to detect contrast and edges. It is a difference engine that survives by noticing what changes. When the environment becomes perfectly static and flat, your brain becomes starved for meaningful information. In this state of sensory hunger, the neural gain or volume in your visual and auditory cortex is turned up to its maximum sensitivity. The brain begins to amplify its own internal electrical hum and interpret random neural firing as external reality. This is why, as you wait for sleep, you may begin to see phosphenes, swirling clouds of color, geometric lattices, or even fleeting faces behind your closed eyelids. You are witnessing the raw, unedited background noise of your own nervous system. It is the beginning of the internal cinema, where the brain stops being a window to the outside world and starts being a projector for the dream space. 93. Chronostasis and the second that stretches into infinity. Have you ever glanced at a ticking analog clock and felt, for a split second, that the first tick you saw lasted much longer than the ones that followed? This is a perceptual glitch called chronostasis, or the stopped clock illusion. It is a byproduct of the saccadic masking we discussed earlier. Because your brain mutes your vision while your eyes are darting from one point to another to prevent motion blur, there is a tiny blackout in your consciousness. To prevent you from noticing this hole in your life, the brain takes the first clear image it sees after the eye movement and backfills it into the gap of the blackout. It literally rewrites your memory of the immediate past, stretching the first second of the clock to cover the time you were blind during the eye movement. This proves that your perception of time is a subjective edit. Your brain would rather lie to you about the length of a second than allow you to perceive a gap in the continuity of your existence. Tonight, as you drift off, your brain is relaxing this rigid editing process, allowing the seconds of your internal world to stretch into the vast, timeless horizons of your dreams. 91. The sense of presence and the neural ghost in the room, decoding the guardian of the threshold. The sense of presence, often referred to in clinical literature as a feeling of a presence, FOP, is one of the most hauntingly vivid and deeply misunderstood perceptions in the human repertoire, manifesting as that unmistakable, skin-crawling prickle on the back of the neck that convinces you someone or something is standing just inches behind you in a locked, empty room. For thousands of years, this startling phenomenon was the primary evidence for the existence of ghosts, shadow people, and guardian angels, as the sensation is so physically robust that it feels more like an external fact than an internal glitch. However, modern neuroscience has finally peered behind the curtain of this supernatural encounter, identifying its source in the delicate, high-speed calculations of the temporoparietal junction, TPJ. This specific region of your brain acts as the primary architect for your body schema, a sophisticated 3D mental map that constantly tracks where your limbs are and defines the invisible boundary between your own physical being and the rest of the universe. When you are in a state of extreme fatigue, high stress, or transitioning through the thin air of the hypnagogic state between wakefulness and sleep, the synchronization between your different sensory inputs can begin to flicker and fail. If your motor system sends a signal about your position but your sensory system receives it with a slight delay or a distorted echo, the brain faces a massive logical crisis. It has self-data that doesn't fit into its current self-map. To resolve this terrifying inconsistency, the brain performs an emergency Bayesian calculation. Rather than admitting its own internal map is broken, it outsources the data, projecting your own neural signature into the physical space outside your body. You are, quite literally, perceiving a ghost of yourself, a neural double created because your brain has temporarily lost track of where you end and the room begins. This projection is incredibly convincing because it utilizes the same pathways used to detect real social threats. The brain triggers a high alert status in the amygdala, making the presence feel heavy, watching, and undeniably alive. It is a biological survival mechanism gone rogue, a hypervigilant brain preferring to hallucinate a stranger in the dark than to ignore a potential predator. As you lie in bed tonight, this phenomenon is often what causes that brief, sudden feeling that someone is leaning over you or standing in the corner of your eye, but it is actually just the final test of your spatial awareness systems before they power down. By understanding that this presence is merely a displaced reflection of your own nervous system, you can strip away the fear and recognize it as a sign that your brain is successfully decoupling from the physical world. The feeling of a presence is essentially the brain's social radar, searching for a signal in a room full of static. As you consciously lean into the comfort of your blankets and slow your breathing, you are sending a powerful override signal to the TPJ, confirming that your body is safe, stationary, and whole. This allows the brain to finally reabsorb the projected double, pulling that stray energy back into the center of your consciousness where it belongs. The prickle on your neck fades, the heavy atmosphere in the room lightens, and the ghost vanishes back into the neural architecture from which it was born. You are reclaiming your space, shrinking your awareness down from the entire room to just the warm, heavy, and secure territory of your own body, finally alone and truly at peace. As the external world loses its social charge, the brain stops searching for others and prepares for the ultimate internal journey. This presence was the final sentinel of the waking mind, the guard at the gate of the subconscious, and its disappearance is the signal that you are now permitted to cross over. The silence of the room is no longer a threat, but a welcoming embrace, a blank canvas upon which the fluid, peaceful imagery of sleep can now be painted. You are the only inhabitant of this quiet sanctuary, and the only presence remaining is the soft, rhythmic pulse of your own life, carrying you deeper into the dark. 91. The sense of presence and the neural ghost in the room, decoding the guardian of the threshold. The sense of presence, often referred to in clinical literature as a feeling of a presence, FOP, is one of the most hauntingly vivid and deeply misunderstood perceptions in the human repertoire, manifesting as that unmistakable, skin-crawling prickle on the back of the neck that convinces you someone or something is standing just inches behind you in a locked, empty room. For thousands of years, this startling phenomenon was the primary evidence for the existence of ghosts, shadow people, and guardian angels, as the sensation is so physically robust that it feels more like an external fact than an internal glitch. However, modern neuroscience has finally peered behind the curtain of this supernatural encounter, identifying its source in the delicate, high-speed calculations of the temporoparietal junction, TPJ. This specific region of your brain acts as the primary architect for your body schema, a sophisticated 3D mental map that constantly tracks where your limbs are and defines the invisible boundary between your own physical being and the rest of the universe. When you are in a state of extreme fatigue, high stress, or transitioning through the thin air of the hypnagogic state between wakefulness and sleep, the synchronization between your different sensory inputs can begin to flicker and fail. If your motor system sends a signal about your position but your sensory system receives it with a slight delay or a distorted echo, the brain faces a massive logical crisis. It has self-data that doesn't fit into its current self-map. To resolve this terrifying inconsistency, the brain performs an emergency Bayesian calculation. Rather than admitting its own internal map is broken, it outsources the data, projecting your own neural signature into the physical space outside your body. You are, quite literally, perceiving a ghost of yourself, a neural double created because your brain has temporarily lost track of where you end and the room begins. This projection is incredibly convincing because it utilizes the same pathways used to detect real social threats. The brain triggers a high alert status in the amygdala, making the presence feel heavy, watching, and undeniably alive. It is a biological survival mechanism gone rogue, a hypervigilant brain preferring to hallucinate a stranger in the dark than to ignore a potential predator. As you lie in bed tonight, this phenomenon is often what causes that brief, sudden feeling that someone is leaning over you or standing in the corner of your eye, but it is actually just the final test of your spatial awareness systems before they power down. By understanding that this presence is merely a displaced reflection of your own nervous system, you can strip away the fear and recognize it as a sign that your brain is successfully decoupling from the physical world. 94. The overview effect, the perception of universal interconnectedness and the cognitive shift of the infinite. The overview effect is perhaps the most transformative and statistically rare perceptual shift ever documented in human history, describing a profound cognitive metamorphosis experienced by astronauts when they view the Earth from the vacuum of space for the first time. In our everyday, ground-level existence, our perception is fundamentally fragmented and parochial. We are biologically tuned to perceive boundaries, to notice the us versus them of human tribalism, and to focus on the immediate, tangible distances that separate our cities, our nations, and our lives. However, when the human brain is suddenly confronted with the singular, glowing, and incredibly fragile blue marble of Earth suspended in an absolute, terrifying void of nothingness, the habitual categories of perception simply collapse under the weight of a new, overwhelming gestalt. This isn't just an emotional reaction. It is a total rewiring of the brain's spatial and social processing centers, where the concept of a border or a country is instantly revealed as a local hallucination, replaced by a visceral, undeniable perception of the Earth as a single, living, and interconnected organism. This cognitive shift is so powerful because it forces the brain to reconcile two conflicting scales of reality: the immense importance of our personal lives and the staggering insignificance of our physical footprint within the cosmic arena. Astronauts frequently report that upon seeing the thin blue line of the atmosphere, which is as thin as a layer of varnish on a globe, they experience an intense, almost physical surge of empathy and a protective instinct for the collective life of the planet. This reveals that our worldview is not a fixed moral compass, but rather a direct product of our physical perspective. When you change the literal lens through which you see the world, you fundamentally change the nature of how you think, feel, and value life. The brain's default mode network, which usually focuses on the self and one's own problems, is silenced by the awe of the infinite, leading to a state of self-transcendence, where the ego dissolves into a much larger sense of cosmic belonging. In the context of your journey tonight, you are experiencing a localized version of this overview effect as you retreat from the ground-level noise of your daily life. Just as the astronaut leaves the atmosphere to see the truth of the world, you are leaving the atmosphere of your worries, your to-do lists, and your social identity to see the truth of your own consciousness. As the specific details of your room and your day fade into the shadows, your perception is expanding beyond the boundaries of your individual story, allowing you to feel the quiet, shared rhythm of the millions of people who are drifting into sleep along with you at this very moment. You are no longer a person defined by a specific job, a specific name, or a specific set of problems. You are a single point of awareness within a vast, sleeping planet, connected to the ancient, biological cycle of rest that has sustained life for eons. This expansion of perception is a vital cleansing of the mind, a way to put the anxieties of the day into a much larger, more peaceful context. When you view your life from this mental orbit, the problems that felt insurmountable in the bright light of noon are revealed to be as tiny and insignificant as the invisible borders between countries. The overview effect allows you to realize that you are safe because you are part of something much larger than yourself. A resilient, interconnected system that knows exactly how to heal and restore itself during the night. You are not an isolated island of consciousness. You are a wave on a global ocean of sleep, and as you let go of the ground, you are free to float in the weightless, borderless territory of your own deep rest. By embracing this perspective, you are giving your nervous system permission to drop its defenses and surrender to the pull of the night. The self that was so busy navigating the complexities of the world is now resting, replaced by a universal self that is content to simply exist in the quiet. The earth continues to turn, the stars continue to glow, and your body continues to breathe, all without any effort from your conscious mind. You have reached the orbital height of sleep, where the view is beautiful, the air is still, and the only thing left to do is drift. The journey has carried you far from the noise and the conflict, and you are finally home, resting in the heart of the great, glowing marble of the night. The Mona Lisa effect is a pervasive and startling perceptual illusion that serves as a profound window into the hyperspecialized social brain, revealing how our nervous system is hardwired to prioritize the detection of human gaze above almost all other environmental stimuli. This phenomenon, where the eyes in a two-dimensional portrait or photograph appear to follow you with uncanny persistence as you move from left to right, is not a supernatural occurrence or a trick of the artist's brush, but rather a direct consequence of how our brain interprets 3D geometry from 2D planes. Because the person in the image was looking directly into the center of the camera lens or the artist's eyes, the relationship between the pupils and the corners of the eye remains mathematically fixed. Unlike a real human in 3D space whose gaze direction would shift relative to your position, the flat geometry of a painting never changes. Your brain, which is evolutionarily biased to interpret centered pupils as a direct social signal, refuses to accept that the eyes are stationary and instead hallucinates that they are actively tracking your every movement. This persistent illusion demonstrates that your perception is not a passive mirror of reality, but an active, biased storyteller that prefers to see attention even where it cannot possibly exist, ensuring you are always aware of being the subject of another's gaze. This hypersensitivity is rooted in a primitive survival circuit known as the gaze detection system, which is managed by a high-speed neural pathway connecting the superior temporal sulcus to the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm center. In the ancestral environment, the ability to instantly perceive where a predator or a rival was looking was the difference between life and death. A direct gaze signified a potential attack, a challenge to your status, or a social opportunity, while an averted gaze signified safety, submission, or a shift in the group's focus. Humans are unique among primates in that we evolved a large amount of white sclera surrounding the iris, specifically to act as a signaling flag that makes our gaze direction incredibly easy for others to decode even from a vast distance or in low-light conditions. We are, in a sense, the most visible species on Earth, possessing a social radar so sensitive that we can feel the weight of someone staring at us through a crowd or from across the street even before we consciously see them. This biological broadcast of our attention ensures that human society is held together by a constant, unspoken web of visual connection, a web that your brain is constantly weaving and monitoring every second you are awake. 96. Haptic imagery and the ghost of touch, the brain's power to feel the intangible. Haptic Haptic imagery is the brain's extraordinary ability to simulate the physical sensation of touch, pressure, and temperature without any actual external stimulus, proving that the feeling of the world is a localized event occurring entirely within the folds of your parietal lobe. While we often think of imagination as a visual or auditory process, your brain maintains a high-resolution, bidirectional link to your entire body through the somatosensory cortex. When you focus your attention intensely on a specific part of your body, such as the tip of your thumb or the soles of your feet, you are essentially increasing the neural gain in those specific cortical columns. This increased electrical activity can create a tactile hallucination, so robust that you may begin to feel a distinct tingling, a phantom warmth, or a phantom breeze, despite being in a perfectly still environment. This reveals that your brain is not just a receiver of touch. It is a master generator of it, capable of rendering the texture of reality from the internal library of every sensation you have ever experienced. This internal power becomes particularly vivid during the hypnagogic transition into sleep, where the brain's reality monitoring filters begin to dissolve. Have you ever been on the verge of sleep and felt a sudden, distinct sensation of a hand on your shoulder, or the feeling of a heavy blanket being pulled up, only to realize you are alone? This is your brain's haptic engine misfiring as it disconnects from the external world. Because the motor cortex is being paralyzed to prevent you from acting out your dreams, while the sensory cortex remains active, the brain often fills in the lack of real movement with simulated touch. This is the same mechanism that allows you to feel the splash of cold water, the grit of sand, or the embrace of a loved one in a dream with a physical intensity that is indistinguishable from waking life. Your brain doesn't need the object to create the feeling. It only needs the neural code for the sensation to be active. As you lie still tonight, you can use this ghost of touch to facilitate your descent into sleep through a process often called body scanning. By moving your attention from your toes up to your head, you are essentially pinging your internal body map and then allowing those sectors to go offline. As you withdraw your attention from each area, the haptic imagery fades, and you may begin to experience a profound sense of weightlessness. This happens because your brain, receiving no new movement data and no new pressure changes, eventually stops calculating your weight against gravity. You are no longer perceiving the mattress beneath you as a solid object. You are perceiving a neutral, floating state where the boundaries of your skin feel blurred or expanded. This tactile silence is the final physical requirement for the mind to fully let go of the three-dimensional world. This weightlessness is the launchpad for the dream state. Once the brain has successfully muted the constant gravity chatter from your skin and joints, it is free to use that same haptic energy to build the impossible physics of your dreams. You might perceive yourself flying, falling, or breathing underwater, all because the brain has stopped using its touch software to track the real world and has started using it to explore the imagined one. The ghost of touch is no longer haunted by the rules of the room. It is now a fluid, creative force that can make you feel anything you can imagine. You are transitioning from the feeling of a person in a bed to the feeling of a consciousness in a universe of infinite textures. Tonight, as you feel that final softening of your physical boundaries, know that it is a sign of your brain's incredible sophistication. It has finished its job of protecting you in a world of hard edges and cold surfaces, and it is now inviting you into a world where everything is as soft and malleable as a thought. The haptic radar is silent, the body map is dark, and you are finally ready to drift into the weightless deep, where the only thing you will feel is the effortless, soaring freedom of the night. You are no longer held by the earth, you are held by the dream, beyond the mechanical sensation of pressure and the localized map of your skin. Your brain possesses a hidden, emotional tactile network known as the C-tactile, CT, afferent system. These are specialized, slow-conducting nerve fibers that ignore the hard edges and textures of the physical world, responding instead to effective touch, the specific velocity and temperature of a gentle, comforting stroke. Unlike the fast nerves that tell you if a surface is rough or smooth, CT fibers bypass the primary sensory centers and plug directly into the posterior insular cortex, a deep brain structure that processes your internal state of being. This system is the biological foundation for the sense of safety. When it is activated, your brain can literally hallucinate the presence of a comforting embrace. Tonight, As you settle into your blankets, your brain is actively searching for this effective signal, using the weight of the fabric to trigger a cascade of endogenous oxytocin, the cuddle chemical, which serves to lower your cortisol levels and chemically signal to every cell in your body that the hunt is over and it is safe to sleep. This haptic memory is so powerful that your brain can actually perform tactile completion, a phenomenon where it fills in the gaps of a sensation to create a feeling of wholeness. If you are used to sleeping with a specific pillow or against a partner, your brain expects that pressure in its internal body map. When it is absent, the brain may temporarily create a phantom sensation of that pressure to maintain its sense of equilibrium. This is an incredible display of top-down processing, where your emotional needs dictate what your skin perceives. As the lights dim, your brain begins to play back these tactile memories, rendering the feeling of a safe, enclosed space. You aren't just feeling the bed. You are feeling the accumulated memory of safety that your brain has built over thousands of nights. By consciously acknowledging this ghost of comfort, you can amplify the signal, allowing the sensation of being cradled and protected to wash over you like a warm tide, drowning out the sharp, jagged thoughts of the day. The final stage of this tactile journey is proprioceptive quietude, a state where the brain essentially mutes the constant data stream from your muscles and joints to prevent sensory overload during the dream state. In our waking hours, your brain is bombarded by proprioception, the internal sense of where your limbs are in space. To enter the deep restorative phases of sleep, the brain must decalibrate this system. This is why, in the moments before you drift off, you might feel a sudden, strange sensation that your hands are much larger than they are, or that your body is shrinking or expanding, a phenomenon known as the Alice in Wonderland syndrome. 97. The Poggendorf illusion and the geometric blueprint. Why your mind refuses to see the real world. The Poggendorf illusion is a cornerstone of perceptual psychology that reveals a fundamental, hidden truth about your consciousness. Your brain is not a camera, nor is it a neutral observer of reality. It is a rigid architect that fixes the geometry of the world to fit a pre-existing internal blueprint. If you were to look at a diagonal line that is interrupted by a thick vertical bar, the two ends of that line will appear to be completely misaligned. One will seem higher or lower than its counterpart, even though mathematically they form a perfect straight trajectory. This occurs because your visual cortex, specifically the area known as V1, is not designed to calculate raw angles. Instead, it possesses an evolutionary bias toward the horizontal and vertical axes, the horizon and the trees, because these are the most stable and reliable features of the natural world. Your brain essentially overestimates the magnitude of acute angles and underestimates obtuse ones, performing a real-time, subconscious correction that distorts the actual geometry of the image to satisfy its own demand for structural stability. This geometric correction is a survival adaptation of immense importance. If your brain reported the raw, unedited sensory data of every angle you encountered, your perception of the world would be a chaotic, unstable mess of shifting perspectives every time you tilted your head. By applying these priors, the internal rules that dictate how space should look, the brain ensures that a door always looks rectangular and the floor always looks flat, even when the light hitting your retina suggests otherwise. This process, known as perceptual constancy, proves that your mind is constantly overwriting the data provided by your eyes. You don't see the world as it is. You see it as your brain concludes it must be to remain logical. You are living inside a mental model of reality, a world where the straight lines of your life are actually the result of a massive, behind-the-scenes computational effort to keep the horizon steady. Adding a deeper layer to this geometric mystery is the oblique effect, the biological fact that our brains are physically more sensitive to horizontal and vertical lines than to diagonals. Our neural pathways have more dedicated hardware, more neurons, for processing the cardinal directions because they define our gravitational reality. This means that diagonal lines, like the one in the Poggendorf illusion, are inherently more expensive for the brain to process. In the quiet, shifting shadows of your bedroom tonight, this geometric bias is what creates the visual echoes and subtle distortions you might notice in the corner of your eye. As the light dims, your brain has less hard data to work with, causing it to rely even more heavily on its internal blueprints to guess the shapes of the furniture and the walls. The logic of the straight line is the final anchor of the waking mind. It is what keeps you tethered to the three-dimensional world of objects and distances. As you cross the threshold into the hypnagogic state, these geometric biases finally begin to dissolve. The prefrontal cortex, the logic center that enforces these rigid rules of alignment, starts to lose its grip, allowing the angles of your reality to finally bend, warp, and melt. This is why dreams often feature impossible architecture, staircases that lead nowhere, or spaces that change their shape even as you move through them. The brain has finally stopped trying to fix the geometry and is now allowing the fluid, abstract logic of the subconscious to take over. By leaning into this softening of the world, you are participating in the ultimate psychological surrender. You are letting go of the need for the world to be straight, aligned, or correct. You are moving away from the rigid, vertical world of the day and into the horizontal, flowing world of the night. The correction is over. The calculations have finished. The brain has decided that the world is stable enough to leave behind. You are drifting into a state where the only geometry that matters is the circular rhythm of your breath and the steady pulse of your heart. You are leaving the grid behind and entering the deep, unmapped ocean of your own mind, where the lines are whatever you wish them to be. Tonight, as you feel the room around you lose its sharp edges and its definite boundaries, know that you are safe in this shapelessness. You are no longer an architect, you are the space itself. Adding to the mystery of the Poggendorf effect is the principle of neural economy. Your brain is the most energy-hungry organ in your body, and processing complex, diagonal, or misaligned information requires significantly more metabolic power than processing simple, cardinal structures. This is why, as you tire, the Poggendorf illusion actually becomes stronger. Your brain begins to take computational shortcuts, forcing the diagonal lines into more predictable, albeit incorrect, orientations to save energy. In the twilight hours, your perception becomes a minimalist editor, stripping away the difficult geometry of the world. This is a vital precursor to sleep. Your brain is essentially tidying up the visual field, reducing the complex 3D world into a simplified 2D map that requires less and less conscious maintenance until, eventually, the map itself can be discarded. Furthermore, this geometric bias is deeply linked to your vestibular system, the delicate balance mechanism in your inner ear. The Poggendorf illusion relies on your brain's firm belief in up and down. When you lie down to sleep, you are shifting your head from a vertical orientation to a horizontal one, which sends a massive signal to your visual cortex to reset its geometric coordinate system. This is why, in the moments before sleep, you might feel a strange sensation of the room tilting or the ceiling seeming to dip. Your brain is recalibrating its internal level. As you settle into your pillow, you are effectively unplugging the Poggendorf bias. By removing the vertical gravitational pressure, you allow your mind to enter a state of geometric neutrality, where the rigid rules of alignment no longer apply and the mind is free to drift into the non-Euclidean landscapes of the dream world. Finally, there is the phenomenon of spatial decoupling. In our waking lives, our survival depends on our ability to accurately perceive the straightness of a path or the alignment of a tool. But as you enter the final stages of the night, your brain undergoes a functional disconnection from the physical environment. The Poggendorf illusion is a wake-state glitch. It only exists as long as you are trying to measure the world. As your eyes close and stay closed, the very concept of alignment loses its meaning. You are moving into a realm where straight and broken are no longer relevant categories. This is the ultimate geometric peace, a state where you are no longer trying to fix or align your reality, but are simply existing within a fluid, formless space. The architect in your brain has finally put down its ruler and compass, leaving you in a world that is perfectly, beautifully unmeasured. 98. Biological motion and the 11. Soul. The brain's primal hunger for life. One of the most profound and eerie shortcuts your brain takes is the detection of biological motion. This is a specialized neural process that allows you to identify the presence of another living being with an almost supernatural speed and accuracy, even when the visual data is incredibly sparse. If you were shown a pitch-black screen with just 11 tiny white dots representing the major joints of a human body, the ankles, knees, hips, wrists, elbows, and shoulders, and those dots began to move relative to one another, your brain would instantly, within a mere 200 milliseconds, perceive a living, breathing human being. This isn't a learned skill. It is a hardwired survival instinct. You don't see 11 dots. You see a soul in motion. From those few points of light, you can instantly determine if the dot person is happy or sad, male or female, young or old, and even if they are carrying a heavy invisible suitcase or limping from an injury. This phenomenon is handled by a specific high-speed processor in your brain known as the superior temporal sulcus, STS. This region is essentially a life detector that has evolved over millions of years to find agency in the chaos of the environment. In the ancestral world, failing to notice a predator camouflaged in the grass or a rival hidden in the shadows meant death. Therefore, the STS is tuned to a hair trigger setting. It is so hungry for social connection and survival data that it would rather hallucinate life where there is none than miss a single movement of a real living thing. This is why we see faces in the clouds, figures in the trees, or ghosts in the billowing of a curtain. Your brain is a hyperactive animator, constantly projecting the template of the human form onto the static world around you to ensure you are never caught off guard. As you lie in the stillness of your room tonight, this life detection system is the final guardian of your consciousness. Even as you begin to drift, the STS remains on high alert, performing a low-gain scan of the shadows in your peripheral vision. This is often why, in the state of hypnagogia, you might experience a brief flash of a person standing in the corner of the room or the sense of a figure moving just outside your field of view. It is not a haunting but a neural misfire, your brain taking the random low-light static of the room and auto-completing it into the shape of a person because that is the most important shape it knows. It is the final check and balance of your social evolution, scanning the dark one last time to confirm that you are safe from intruders before it finally gives the signal to power down. Beyond simple survival, this system is deeply tied to mirror neurons, which allow you to feel an echo of the movement you perceive. When you see the 11 dots walk with a heavy, tired gait, your own brain simulates that tiredness. As you settle into sleep, you can use this mechanism to your advantage. By visualizing the biological motion of a calm, rhythmic breath or the slow, heavy movement of a body sinking into a soft surface, you are feeding your STS a signal of profound peace. You are telling your internal life detector that the environment is stable, the others are at rest, and there is no need for vigilance. The STS begins to quiet its activity. The dots of your perception stop searching for patterns, and the hunger for social data is finally satisfied by the comfort of your own presence. The 11-dot soul is the last piece of your identity to let go. It is the part of you that defines yourself in relation to other living things. By recognizing that these figures in the dark are just the projections of a protective and caring brain, you can invite that guardian to rest. The STS stops scanning the shadows, the ghosts vanish into the simple geometry of the room, and the social brain finally decouples from the world. You are no longer looking for life, you are simply being life. The guardian has closed its eyes, the radar is silent, and you are permitted to slide into the deep, solitary, and perfectly safe landscape of your dreams, where you are the only soul in motion. One of the most fascinating layers of biological motion is its role in intersubjective synchrony. Your brain doesn't just detect the 11-dot soul. It actually attempts to align your own internal rhythms with the motion it perceives. This is why watching someone breathe slowly or move with a heavy, relaxed gait can physically induce a state of calm in your own nervous system. The superior temporal sulcus, STS, acts as a bridge between your eyes and your heart rate. In the minutes before sleep, if you visualize the rhythmic, oscillating biological motion of a pendulum or the slow, fluid movement of a point-light figure drifting through water, you are effectively hacking this system. You are providing your brain with a high-priority social signal of safety and repose, which triggers the parasympathetic nervous system to further slow your pulse and prepare you for the total stillness of the night. Furthermore, the detection of biological motion is remarkably resilient to noise. You can identify a human walker even if the dots are obscured by hundreds of other randomly moving points, a phenomenon known as masked motion perception. This illustrates just how much processing power your brain allocates to finding the living within the dead. As you lie in the dark, your brain is performing this exact task on the static of your room. It is filtering through the noise of the shadows and the low-level hum of your environment, looking for the specific mask of human presence. When it finds nothing but the stationary geometry of your furniture, it experiences a signal-to-noise shift. The brain concludes that there is zero biological threat in the vicinity, which allows the amygdala, your emotional smoke detector, to finally go into a sleep mode. By understanding that your brain is a pattern-matching machine looking for life, you can appreciate the profound silence of a room where no dots are moving. Finally, there is the kinematic distillation of the self. During the day, your brain is preoccupied with the what of your environment, the colors, the objects, the names. But as the lights go out, your brain shifts its focus to the how, the pure kinematics of movement. In the hypnagogic state, you might experience proprioceptive flashes, where you feel the sensation of your own body walking, swimming, or swinging, as if you were viewing yourself as a point light figure from the outside. This is your brain's way of offlining your motor memories. It is distilling the complex movements of your day into simple geometric trajectories to be stored in your long-term memory. This phantom motion is a sign that your brain is successfully decoupling your consciousness from your physical muscles. You are becoming a soul in motion without the need for a body to move, preparing you for the fluid, gravity-defying kinematics of the dream world where you can move through space with nothing but the power of your intent. 99. The Tetris Effect, Nightly Defragmentation. The Tetris Effect is the visual proof of memory consolidation. When you see repetitive patterns from your day, like falling blocks, lines of code, or the road, behind your closed eyes, you are witnessing your hippocampus uploading data to the neocortex for long-term storage. This is your brain's version of nightly defragmentation. It replays the day's most intense patterns to strengthen neural pathways, clearing out the mental clutter so you can wake up with a fresh, optimized perspective. 100. The Thalamic Gate, the Final Surrender. The 100th truth is the closing of the thalamic gate. The thalamus acts as the brain's grand central station, relaying sensory information to your conscious mind. As you enter deep sleep, the thalamus begins to fire rhythmic bursts called sleep spindles that effectively block out the physical world. This is the final surrender, where the gate slams shut on external noise and touch, allowing your consciousness to detach from the body and drift into the limitless, weightless sanctuary of the dream state. The final closure of your consciousness is a biological masterpiece where the thalamic gate, the brain's central relay station, switches from a wide-open bridge of sensory data to a rhythmic, pulsating barrier that effectively silences the physical universe. As your brain transitions into deep sleep, the thalamus begins to fire in synchronized bursts known as sleep spindles, which actively suppress incoming sounds, touches, and external distractions, ensuring that the main screen of your conscious cortex is no longer bombarded by the noise of the room. This closure signifies the moment your consciousness decouples from the three-dimensional grid of reality and the linear ticking of time, allowing your internal energy to pivot entirely toward the Tetris effect of defragmenting your memories and the limitless, non-linear creativity of the subconscious. You are no longer an observer of the world, but a participant in a pure, weightless state of potential where the self dissolves into the restorative dark, leaving the architect and the sentinel of the day behind as you finally, perfectly, come home to the deep.